Here's the stupid part right away. Everybody is yelling about the new StarCraft game, and half the internet is not even talking about the same project. One side thinks Blizzard is making some big budget, internal shooter. The other thinks Nexon got handed the corpse of StarCraft, so they can stuff it with battle passes and shop bundles. Then the RTS crowd shows up, sees the word shooter, and starts holding a funeral for StarCraft 3, before the body even hits the floor. Beautiful, total chaos. Very on brand for gaming news in 2026, and honestly I get why people are pissed. Because when you've watched enough franchises get dragged behind market trends, like a shopping cart with one broken wheel, your brain stops giving companies the benefit of the doubt. You hear beloved strategy IP, and then 5 seconds later somebody says extraction shooter, and your soul leaves your body. That reaction is not irrational, that is muscle memory. Still, the conversation around this is getting mangled by one very basic problem. There are reportedly 2 StarCraft projects in the rumor mill. One is Blizzard's internal project led by Dan Hay, the Far Cry guy. That sounds like the premium, serious, high-end internal bet. The other is the reported Nexon-led StarCraft project, being handled by their shooter division, the team tied to Sudden Attack. Separate lanes, distinct projects, and totally different vibes. Yet, the internet smashed them together into one blob, and decided the whole thing is either dead on arrival, or proof that Blizzard finally understands shooters. Neither take is smart. That's why this story is interesting. Not because StarCraft is back, nor because RTS is dead, or even because Nexon exists and everybody suddenly becomes an expert in Korean publishing. The real story is watching people fight over what StarCraft is even allowed to become. Because that's the part nobody wants to admit. This is not just about genre, it is about ownership. Fans don't legally own StarCraft, everybody knows that. Emotionally though, different story. Players feel like they built part of that legacy. They spent years on ladder. They watched esports. They learned build orders that looked like tax fraud to normal people. They gave that universe meaning. So, when the suits come around and go, great news, we found a modern trend to bolt onto it, people get hostile fast. Makes sense to me. What annoys me is when the audience gets treated like they're overreacting. No, gamers remember things. That's the problem. Blizzard already tried to make StarCraft shooters before. StarCraft Ghost turned into one of those cursed gaming stories that people still bring up with the tone usually reserved for X's and military disasters. Then, there were later reports about another cancelled StarCraft shooter project inside Blizzard. So, when players hear, don't worry, this new one could work, the correct response is not blind hype. The correct response is cool. Show me. That's not negativity, it's called learning. Then you get the other lazy take. Nexon. Oh, so it's trash. Hold on. The monetization fear is fair. I'm not even going to pretend otherwise. If players hear the Nexon name and immediately picture cash shops, skin bundles, progression shortcuts, and some soul-crushing store UI, designed by a guy who thinks dopamine should cost $15, I can't blame them. That company has a reputation. Reputations exist for a reason. But the full story is a little less cartoonish. Nexon is not just a mobile slop company and done. They also own Embark Studios, the people behind the finals and ARC Raiders. That means shooter talent is in the building. Tech is in the building. Systems knowledge is in the building. So, the idea that anything with the Nexon label must automatically play like bargain bin nonsense is too easy. Riskier. Hopeless, not automatically. That matters because once you strip away the panic, this actually looks like a very obvious industry move. Publishers do not look at StarCraft and see your childhood. They see an IP with strong recognition, huge visual identity, old prestige, and a fanbase desperate enough to argue for 3 weeks over a rumor. In executive language, that means the brand still has blood in it. The question becomes, what genre gets funded now? The answer is not RTS. The response, at least in their minds, is whatever can drive retention, streaming social clips and long-term monetization, without scaring away broader audiences. And right now that means shooters, live service systems, extraction mechanics, tension loops, risk-reward big moments, easy marketing. That's the cold truth sitting under all this drama. RTS fans are not just mad because a shooter exists, they're mad because this feels like confirmation that the industry no longer sees classic StarCraft as the main event. The universe matters. The Marines matter. The Zerg matter. The branding matters. Meanwhile, the actual strategy identity, the thing that made StarCraft, starts looking like optional luggage. That's the wound. You can hear it every time somebody says, so StarCraft 3 is never happening, right? They're not asking for information. They already know what the trend lines look like. Nobody wants to say it, but that question sounds like grief. Real grief, gaming grief. The dumb kind that still hits because you know exactly how this industry works. A franchise stops being about mastery. A publisher starts talking about reach. Some consultant somewhere says genre expansion. Then fans get told they're too emotional when they notice the furniture is being removed from the house. That said, a StarCraft shooter is not a bad idea by default. That's the part I think the internet keeps fumbling. People don't hate StarCraft shooters. They hate bad StarCraft shooters. Massive difference. Give players a grimy Terran Marine game with actual weight, actual danger, and actual atmosphere, and they will show up. No problem. Drop me into some collapsing outpost surrounded by Zerg, make ammo feel scarce, make every hallway sound wrong, and make extraction feel like a miracle. Now we're talking. Suddenly, this doesn't feel like some random, trend-chasing reskin. It feels like somebody finally noticed StarCraft has one of the best sci-fi combat sandboxes in gaming, and decided to use it. That's where the extraction angle gets more interesting than people want to admit. Most older RTS fans hear extraction shooter and immediately zone out, because the name sounds like something invented by a whiteboard. Fair enough. The genre label is ugly. The actual loop is simple. You go in with gear and look for better stuff. You fight players' AI or both and try to leave alive. Death means you lose what you brought. Extraction means you keep what you earned. That's it. Poker with rifles. Greed with footsteps. Stress as a game mechanic. Now put that inside StarCraft. Terran squads dropping into a Zerg hive to recover tech. Protoss relic runs. Vespene halls. Experimental gear. Infested zones, rival teams. A shuttle window that opens for 15 seconds while everything on the map suddenly wants your lungs. That setup actually fits the StarCraft universe way better than some people are willing to admit. The idea is not the red flag. Execution is the red flag. And then we get to the question hanging over the whole thing. Why Nexon? Easy answer: Korea. StarCraft in South Korea is not just a popular old game. That franchise has cultural weight there that Western audiences sometimes forget. Reports said major Korean publishers were competing for the rights to develop new StarCraft-related content, and Nexon reportedly won. That tells you exactly what this move is supposed to be. It's not random outsourcing. It looks like a regional power play with global upside. Blizzard brings legacy. Korea brings heat. Nexon brings local strength and shooter infrastructure. That's the business logic. Cold, clean, very corporate, and very believable. Does that make players trust it? Absolutely not. Trust is the real currency here, and nobody in this industry seems to understand how expensive that's become. That's why one of the few genuinely smart details in this story caught my attention. Nexon reportedly brought in Choi Jun-ho, the StarCraft modder known for Temple Siege, to help lead planning on the project. Now, does hiring one respected community figure magically solve everything? Of course not. One guy cannot stand in front of a monetization team like a Riot Shield and save the game with good intentions. Still, it shows awareness. They know the audience is suspicious. They know you cannot drag a legendary RTS name into the shooter space and act shocked when fans stare at you like you just stole copper wire from a church. That's the turning point in how I see this whole mess. The problem is not change, problem is fake change. Players can accept a new genre if the people making it actually understand what they are borrowing. Gamers are not these fragile little museum guards who freak out whenever a series does something different. Players adapt all the time. What they do not tolerate anymore is brand extraction. Taking the shell, gutting the center, and selling the logo back to the audience, like they should feel grateful a corpse can still dance. That's why reactions get so brutal online. Nobody wants to be tricked again. Not after years of live service breakdowns, trend chasing, broken launches, fake gameplay, manipulative stores, and the same apology notes written in 3 slightly different corporate fonts. The audience is tired. So now every rumor gets cross-examined like a murder witness. Good, it should. And if Blizzard really is aiming for a reveal at BlizzCon 2026, which a lot of people are speculating, then they need to understand what kind of room they're walking into. A cinematic trailer alone will not cut it. Nobody cares about moody voiceovers and dramatic camera pans anymore. Not for this, not with this baggage. Gameplay. That's the whole assignment. Show what the gunplay feels like, and whether the setting adds something real. Show what makes this StarCraft, instead of generic sci-fi shooter with familiar wallpaper. No fake swagger, no mystery box marketing, no trailer that spends 90 seconds pretending players are too stupid to know when they're being sold a promise instead of a product. And yes, the monetization issue is still sitting there like a bomb under the chair. Because here's the thing, a StarCraft extraction shooter could absolutely work. Heavy, dangerous, tactical, ugly in a good way, and full of pressure. Great. Fine. But the second money starts messing with competitive integrity, the whole thing collapses. If players smell pay to win, stat boosts, wallet shortcuts, or progression systems built to make frustration profitable, it's over. Deservedly over. A game built on tension cannot survive if the tension feels purchased. That's why gamers are right to stay defensive. Not because they hate innovation, because they know how this goes. Companies love saying they want to evolve a franchise. Sometimes that means real creative ambition. Other times it means somebody found a way to turn recognition into recurring revenue. Both versions use the same press language. Players have learned to tell the difference the hard way. So where do I land? Pretty simple. RTS fans are not wrong for being mad. Shooter fans are not wrong for being interested. Nexon skepticism is earned. Blind doom posting is still lazy. A StarCraft shooter could be sick. A StarCraft shooter could also become one more expensive lesson in why gamers stop trusting publishers. All of that can be true at once. That's the mature read, and yeah, I know, mature read sounds way too polite for this mess. But the point stands. You do not need to worship the rumor. You do not need to bury it early either. What players should do is hold the line where it matters. Demand proof and respect for the universe. Demand systems that don't feel designed by monetization goblins. That's not being negative. That's being a functioning adult with gaming trauma. The real story is that gamers finally see the pattern now. Branding alone does not hypnotize people the way it used to. A big name is not enough. A beloved IP is not enough. One cool render of a marine helmet is definitely not enough. Players want to know what kind of game they're actually being asked to trust. That shift matters. Because once the audience starts seeing the trick, companies have to work harder. They have to show more. They have to earn belief instead of renting it off nostalgia. That is healthy. Painful for marketing departments, maybe, but healthy for everybody else. Right now, StarCraft is stuck in that exact pressure point. Huge name, massive baggage, real potential. Zero free trust. Honestly, that feels about right. Until somebody puts raw gameplay on screen, nobody owes this thing faith. Not the RTS crowd, not shooter fans, not longtime Blizzard players, not anybody. One hand stays on the wallet, other hand stays on the eject button. That is not cynicism anymore. That is survival.